Alright guys, um, this video is going to cover um, the final exercise for the semester for media and architecture. Um, and so what I'll be covering, and this is a draft of the exercise right here, it's not entirely complete, but basically what it'll deal with is going through the steps through InDesign, so solely using InDesign for creating a portfolio. So there's a few things that I'd like you to do in order to achieve that, including watching this video. That's laid out here in one of the steps. So basically what the exercise is asking you to do is create a portfolio of your semester's work from media and architecture. So each exercise will be one full layout, and I'll show you what I mean by that. What I'm going to walk through in this tutorial is a little bit of an introduction to InDesign. InDesign is very similar to Illustrator. It also has some bearing on relativity to Photoshop. So it's some of the tools you should be aware with immediately. There's a few different nuances to how you're bringing images in and arrange them and so forth, but I'll cover that. But you should feel fairly comfortable starting off using InDesign. So basically what I'm going to cover are these steps. And you can see the deadlines here for when everything is due, and we'll cover that later. Basically the final is due the 5th of May, and you can see these deadlines here. More or less you should be complete with the exercise by the 27th of this month, but I'm giving you some extra time to make some final touches or some adjustments. Okay, so basically what I'm going to cover is how, I'm just using my space bar here to pan just like Photoshop or Illustrator, how to create these layouts, talk a little bit about using the grid, and that's what the video is with Massimo Vignelli. And to give you a little bit of framework for how to just lay things out. And so I'll walk through those. So these are just a few layouts that I put together. But I'm going to go ahead now and start with a fresh file. So I'm going to go into, if you just open this up, you'll have these same options, but I'm going to go into new. It's going to ask if you want a document book, folio, a library. I'm going to open a new document. Now in this, the intent here is for print, and I say that because I'm only going to ask for a digital submittal, so you're only going to be submitting these as a PDF file. The screenshots as one file, the final portfolio as a separate file. But when you submit for either ID or architecture, you're going to be required to submit a physical portfolio. I believe that's still the case. And so this is just a good starting point for portfolios. This is something that as designers that we need to do to present our work, you know, when we're looking for a position at an office or what have you. You want to present your work, right? And in order to do that, you have to compose it in a way that is consistent with your design thinking, or at least that enhances your design approach or design work. And so we deal with portfolios quite a bit in the design disciplines. Okay, so a new document, so I'll leave it for print. The number of pages, I'm going to keep that to, there are 6 exercises in the this semester, I believe. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it would be 2 pages each, because each exercise will have a full spread, a full two-page spread. So that's 12 pages, plus a table of contents, plus a cover sheet or cover page. So that is 12, 13, 14 pages. We want them facing, we'll leave that. Letter, I'd like everyone to use landscape format for this. And the rest of this should be fine. The one thing that I haven't seen quite yet is how to change the units. Right now the units are in, I think these are picas or something. Well, I'll show you how to change those in a bit. But we have the number of pages, so I'll hit OK. Now if I go over here to the right hand, this is similar to again, Photoshop and Illustrator, there are different tools that are just inherent to the Essentials workspace here. We have pages, so we can see all the pages that we've just created. And I think I messed up here. I have to add one page, insert page. Yep. Okay, so now I have full spread here. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This page will be for the table of contents, and this is for the cover page. So I just right-clicked here in order to insert pages. And so you can add or remove, you know, I could just highlight these. These are basically spreads here. I can highlight these and delete them or move them around or what have you. I'll push down my Alt key and I can scroll out to zoom. You can see basically it's this layout, right? So these are the pages. This is where I'm going to do my work, but these are the layouts, kind of looking at it overall as a portfolio, so you can kind of, you know, see how it flows and everything. So that's there. Now before I get any further deeper into this, I want to change these units on the rulers here to inches. And if you don't see your rulers, you should be able to go into View and select, you know, it would say Show Rulers instead of Hide Rulers, or Control and R will toggle those on and off. But I want to change these to inches, just so I know, you know, it's 8.5 by 11. I'd just like to be able to work in inches. These units don't mean much to me. They probably mean a lot to a graphic designer, but not much for me. So I'm going to go into Edit, down to Preferences, and then I will select units and increments. Here, horizontal, I want those to be inches and inches, and I'll say OK. Now I have inches, so the 0 is here in the middle of the layout. I'm going to zoom in on this and then pan over. And I zeroed this in for each layout. And the way to do that is I can just go over here to this corner, the upper left corner, by the rulers. I can left click down and drag this over, and I can line it up with the sheet. There we go. And now 0, I know that this point is 0, 0. So that'll help for kind of laying out grids and everything else. The other thing is the margins. These are pretty big margins. So I'm going to go into Layout, and I'm going to go into Margins and Columns, and I'm going to change that to 1/4 inch. And if I just hit Tab or hit off of this, they're linked right now, so it's going to populate all of those the same. So I have now 1/4 inch for everything. Okay, this is where we need to talk to. So you see what I did here. It just changed the margins for this, and that's because I'm actually working on this first page. And what I want to do at this point to set up the grids and everything, the guidelines and the grid that I want you to look at, is I want to work here. If you look on top, it says A Master. And so if I click up here, I'll just double click on that. Now I'm in a space where it's just that layout, and this will be the master sort of template for all of the other layouts. And so it changed the margins only for that one because I was only on that one page. This will change the margins for all of the layouts. So if I go back into Layout, Margins, and Columns, it'll still be at 1/2 inch. I want that to be 1/4 inch, and I can just hit Tab, it updates. I can hit OK. And, well, I guess I could have selected both of those at the same time, but it's asking me to do it sheet by sheet here. Do the same thing, 0.25. It's leaving it blank because I have these two selected now and they're different. If I hit Tab, it should all populate, and it's okay. Now I have 1/4 inch here. So it's because I was on one sheet or the other that one was working in the other. But I went to this method where I can select both of these sheets. I just hold my Shift key down to select that. So select both, and then updated the margins. Okay, so now if I go back into my layouts, double click here, see they're all now updated with the new margins. Okay, I'm going to go back into master. Okay, so here the next thing that we need to cover, just the margins, is to create new we can create new layers as well. Now I'm in the master spread layout here, but I can still control my layers. So here, see your pages, layers, and links. Links will be for like images that you bring in. Those will be automatically linked as opposed to embedded. And I'll show you how that sort of works. But you have layers just like the other programs, right? So layer one, I'm going to double click on that. I want to call it something else, and I'm just going to make some basic layers that I know that I typically use. You might come up with some different ones, but these are ones that I typically use. So I'm going to say image main is one layer. I'll go down here, create a new layer, double click on that, image background, make another one. I want one for guides, because I want to be able to turn the guides on and off. So these would be for guides. And then a couple for text. I'll have one for text title, so my title text, and then another one, double click here for text body text. Okay. All right, so now again, you can arrange these. I can just drag them up and down to arrange them the way you want, and the order again matters. So image background I probably want at the lowest, so everything else is overlapping it, and I'll keep the text over the main image, and that should be fine. So, but right now I want to work with guides. So I select that, and I'm going to work with guides. So basically what I want to be able to do, and I'm going to have to zero this in again, because this again is the master spread. I suppose the other one that I did. There we go. I'm just going to start to create some guidelines, a basic grid, and this is where I'm asking you to go to this link and watch this video. It'll look something like this, and it's about
My name is
Massimo
and I'm a
Vignelli.
designer. And of course, one of the things that I design most of the time is books.
Books. Okay, so I want you to watch that video, and that's where he talks about using the grid. And he's put together and composed books for a lot of designers, architects. He's well known in the industry. And it's just a place to begin. Like, how do you start to lay things out? I actually have my portfolio laid out a different way than what I use, but I think I might change it to use this method, because I think the grid is a little bit more freeing and offers a little bit more opportunity. Okay, guides. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I know that this is 8.5 by 11. I'm at 11 right here, so my halfway mark is going to be right here, so 5.5. So I'm just going to go over, just like Photoshop and Illustrator, grab a guide. I'm going to line it up, make sure I'm right on 5.5. Boom. Okay, so I'll do that. Also, I'm going to be, let's see, how should I do this? I did it a little bit different in the example. This example is just a little bit different. I actually had an 1/8 inch right here inside of the guideline. But you don't have to do that. I can use, I think, this margin a little bit more. So I'm going to just show you a little bit differently. I think how I might change that. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a guide there, just for the sake, so I know that I'm working with that. And the way, even without like doing the math and figuring out the fractions, you could do that. But for me, just like drawing a line is helpful, because I want to try to find the midpoint of this. So once I found the midpoint, I can find the center, then I'm going to basically have a guide that's going to give me an overall grid with a 1/4 inch space. Okay, so now I can bring another guideline over, and you can see there's some magnetic attraction right there. It might be hard to decipher, but it's sticking to that point. right in the middle, and so that's should be default in InDesign. It's going to snap to like ends or guidelines, and if I this is the let's see, the selection tool, direct selection tool. I guess I should look at some of the tools, and these are very similar to Illustrator. So here's the center point of that line. I can zoom out. You can see it's giving me those control points. So I know that attached to it. Let's see. There's the page tools. You can arrange the pages. Gap tool. Again, these aren't tools that I really use, so I'm not going to really get into all of these. Mostly the ones that I think are necessary to achieve this particular goal. A lot of these are really getting in and fine-tuning. If you're a graphic designer, you'd be very interested in all of these. But I'm just going to kind of give a broad stroke for what we'll be doing for the exercise. Content collector tools. Yeah, I've never used that. But here's a text tool. So just like Illustrator, you can create a text box, and then you can link those boxes. So you can have text flow from one box to the other, and I'll show you how to do that. Align, the pen tool, it behaves the same as Illustrator. A pencil tool, so you can draw some lines there, and again, that's going to be working vector base, and then the stroke and the fill will be responding to various shapes. Obviously, this is a line, so it just has the stroke. If I want to select that or distort it, I can use this selection tool to scale it or change it up a little bit, and then you can get a little bit more detailed with the direct selection tool, and that's where you can actually alter the form of this line. So just like Illustrator, select that, delete. Let's see, rectangle frame. So if you just want to block out, I think, some areas for artwork, perhaps. Shapes, basic shapes. So if you want to create a rectangle, an ellipse, or something like that, you can create that. You can also use the pen tool to create different shapes. Again, just like Illustrator. And then again, you would use the fill and the stroke here to modify the nature of it. Let's see, the other ones, I think they're important. I don't think you need to use these tools. The eyedropper tool, it behaves the same as Illustrator, and so you can select different colors here. That's going to basically select the stroke. So that'll behave the same as Illustrator. The pan tool, again, you can get to this by just holding your space bar down. That's the way I tend to use that the most. And the zoom tool, so you can zoom in like to a window or something if you want. I tend to just use the Alt key and my scroll wheel here on the mouse to kind of zoom around, and then I can pan a little bit quicker. Over the top, you have controls for file, edit, layout. So this is where the margins are, different sort of layout variables. You don't necessarily need to get into that. Type, so here's where you can change the font, the font size. Again, there's multiple ways to get to this. Once you use the text tool and you have a text selected, this top bar of tools is going to populate with relative tools. So then you'll have access to the stroke, the font size, all that stuff. Object, so you can work with objects, and again, we're not really going to be getting into that, but you could start working kind of like you work with Illustrator with this. We won't be getting to using tables. Views are kind of important, and I'll go to this example. We can see here all the guides and everything, and one thing that I can do with the guides on its own layer, I can turn that off. There are these boxes that are showing for text boxes and image boxes, and if I go to view and I want the overprint preview, it's going to try to present it as it will sort of look when it's printed. So that's nice to have. Also, we want to keep those on for now to working with. And then the other thing for view is the display performance. Right now it's at typical. When you bring some images in, they may be a little pixelated, and that's because it's doing that on purpose. It's a cruder image because it allows for more enhanced performance, right? So it's not taxing your video card or your graphics card. in order to do that. So if I go into view and then performance, and I want high quality, you know, hopefully we'll see that kind of get a little bit better. I think this image is, yeah, we can see it's a little bit better. You'll notice it more with some other images. Fast display is just going to make blocks here. And then typical display. Okay. All right. Then window, different window sort of controls here. I don't really add many new tools to this. You might, so these just kind of pop up, and then link is here, and so there's a lot of other tools here. It's not necessarily required, I think, for what we're doing with this exercise. Most of what you need is going to be available here. Again, you have the pages, you have your layers, and then you have the links for images. Here are all the links for the images that I've already placed in this. Let me flip back to the new layout here. So then along the top is just giving you basic information like the size of the stroke. Right now there's no fill color that's applied there. So I could select a fill color, so then you know, whatever shape that you create is going to have that. Control Z out of that. So basic information. Also there's opacity, so let me create that box again. Now I have that selected, and I could start to work with the opacity here. Blur it out if that's what I want to do. The other bits of information, this is about kind of wrapping text, so these are kind of options that you can work with, similar to like Word. I don't tend to use that very much, or you might get into that, but you can, you know, have the text wrap around various objects and so forth. Again, that's not required for what we're doing here. And then there's another tool. Again, let me flip back to this. I'm just going to select one of these images. And so there's some tools, different tools for how it's going to let you frame up those images. And I'll kind of get into those when I start showing you how to place images. Let's see, what else is there to cover? Okay, let's continue with the guides. So right now I know that that's half of this, and all I wanted to do is have 1/8 space to either side for a 1/4 inch overall spacing. So I'm going to keep dragging over these. So now I know that's 1/4 inch. I'll do the same for this, and these are basically like the center lines. And so this is how I created the grid. This is going to go in both directions, vertical and horizontal. And zoom out. I need another one here. Now I'm holding my Alt key down, and that's going to let me copy, and I can hold the Shift key down. That's going to let me slide it perfectly horizontally. So I have that lined up, and then I can bring another line over and wait for it to hit that midpoint. There it is. Now I know that's the midpoint, and then again I can just create the overall 1/4 inch by adding guidelines 1/8 inch away from that center line. So that's all of those. Now I need them in the opposite direction. I don't need these lines anymore. I can get rid of them, otherwise they'll show up. Okay. Let's see. So I want to bring in a horizontal. I'll bring it in the middle. Make that snap there. These look like they're just a little bit off. You can zoom in, and you can still select these and move them around to really be exact. Kind of have to throw it to the side and then bring it back if you're getting that careful with it. There we go. Okay. So I guess the other thing is I know that this is 8.5, so this should be at 4 1/4. So there it is at 4 1/4. So that worked. And then again, I could just draw a line. So let me draw from right from that line. You can see all the symbol changed. I'll hold my shift key down, and then I want to hit this margin. It's going to, again, kind of magnetically snap to that. So that's great. And now I can create another guideline here horizontally. I think that is correct. Yeah, so it's right on there. Now I can just take this, oops, Control Z. I'll use my selection tool, or you can use the other one as well, and then just drag it down. If I just move the cursor off the page down towards the bottom, it's automatically going to scroll around. And this will highlight what it's snapping to, so that's kind of nice so you know what you're doing. Bring another horizontal one down. Oops, sorry, I think that one moved. I can move it up. There. Again, if I want to check to make sure that that is the center of that line of the midpoint, I could just use my direct select tool and it'll show me that midpoint. Okay, so I don't need that anymore. Oops, left those points. Okay, now I can get into here and do the same thing I did for the verticals, is bring in a line. I've got a little bit off, but an 1/8 inch away from these center lines, basically. There we go. And so that's how I did that for each one. That you saw on the other one. Again, that one's a little bit different. I kind of like this better. It's a little cleaner. It's 1/4 inch all the way across, right? So the other one I had added, for whatever reason, another 1/8 inch to the inside, but this is kind of nicer because it's 1/4 inch here, 1/4 inch there, and now it's going to be 1/4 inch in the other direction as well. So I think I prefer this one. Let's finish this up. Go 6 1/4 1/2, so that's an 1/8. And this is probably getting a little sloppy, but get the point. And I'm really looking at the rulers when I'm lining this up. I'm not looking at the line or the guideline itself. I'm actually looking at the ruler. So you can see that little dotted line move up and down. So that's why I know where I am. So that's what I was concentrating on looking at. To do the other ones on the other side, the horizontals are kind of easy because you can just match those up, right? Let's do that as close as you can, kind of far away. There. You can zoom in and kind of clean that up a little bit and make sure it's really nice and aligned. Oops. There we go. And then I don't need the center line anymore. That's a little bit off, but it should be fine. Oops. Okay, grab that. There. This one. There. And then I would have to go through and do the verticals again, same way I did them before. So this setup, it takes a little bit of time, but it's, you know, I get you used to the interface a little bit. So I think it's worth it to kind of go ahead and do this. And plus, just for layout, see, it's snapping to the midpoint of this page. That's kind of nice. And I could have kept those other lines, I guess, and used them here. But just to get used to the interface, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and work with this way. Setting up the grid, it just gives you something. There it is. Something to think about when you're laying out your text and your images. The video would be helpful. It's a quick little video. And it just kind of indicates what you can do with basically a very simple grid. So I have to come in and I'm not going to do this super fast. This might be sloppy. Okay, there. There, eighth inch, come on, line up. Okay. Oh, that's a, yeah, that's eighth inch, right there. It moved, alright. I'm trying to go through this quickly. Good enough, alright, and this last one. Okay, so this is the 1/8 inch here, because I can see there's 8 1/4, so there's my 1/8 inch mark. There we go. Alright, so we have a grid. These, I don't think I need those. I know I put them in there before, but I'm kind of clean those up. And then if you don't want these little center ones too, you can always I'm just highlighting them and deleting them like you would any object. Once you're done with that, and you have your grid, oops, a little off. Then what I could do is lock this layer, because I don't want to. It's nice having on a separate layer, because once you start laying things out, then it gets, sometimes it's a little bit much to have that and a little snap to it when you don't want to, and sometimes you just want to see it without. So I can go into layers now, and I could just go ahead and lock that. Maybe the next thing that'll do is get into some images. Okay, so if I go back into pages, then I can go to my first layout. I'm actually going to go and I'll just double click on this. So now here we are, page 1, 2, and 3, and they all have the grid on it, right? So the grid now is everywhere. And then I can start working with like a title text here. So maybe I want to start with my title text. No, I said images, but we'll get into text here. Now would be a good time to watch the video. We have the grid laid out, and then how to use the grid then I think is would be good. Okay. Text. So we have the title text here. I'm going to go to the text tool, and there are different tools here. If I hold this down, you have similar tools to Illustrator, but I'm just going to use the basic text box, and I'm going to create a title text for the cover sheet here. I'll zoom in on my Alt key, and let's do there. Okay, caps lock. Okay. So you put your name, and I'm not worrying about the size or anything right now, and then what the portfolio is for, right? So you could say ARC 243 semester's work, whatever you want to call it, really, annual. Manual. Oops. Digital tools. Okay, so maybe you wanted this. I'm just going to double click in here, and I can start changing how it's arranged. You have to be kind of justified. Maybe the way I did that. This one could be to one side. Maybe I want this text to be bigger and a different font. I like that font there. I'm kind of into that font, Calibri, for whatever reason. I'll bump that up. Oh yeah. And then this maybe can stay small. And I'm going to go back to that Calibri font. And if you're looking for a particular font and you get into this window here, you see how all these tools just populated, and these are all for text, so it just kind of comes up. You know, say if you wanted like Gil Sans, and I just started typing that, and it went ahead and found it. I had it up here already. So you could start to just type in a letter of the text that you kind of want, and it'll try to find that. And I changed that to something I didn't want, so I will Control V, and that's back to Calibri. Okay. And what size was this? It's 12. Maybe I'll put it up to 14. And I'm going to push that to the bottom of this grid, or this grid cell, let's say. So I don't know, maybe I'm happy with that. Obviously for your portfolio, for, you know, architecture ID, you would call it something else. And then, I don't know, maybe I wanted to bring in an image as a background image or something. Let's see what I think I was messing around with this one. So first I want to make sure I'm on the right layer. So that's title text, that's all good. This would be background image. Unlock it. And I'm going to go ahead into this and just drag and drop this image in there. Now it's giving me this little window here, and if I click on that, I'll get rid of that window. I just dragged and dropped. Now I have this little symbol. Basically what it wants me to do is to lay out the box that this is going to be in. So maybe I want, you know, I know I have all these cells, and again, watching the video with Massimo Vignelli will kind of tell you how to work with it, and I can show you the other example. Maybe I want this to fill up this whole area. So I'm going to start clicking right here and then drag a window. So I'm holding my left key down. Right now I'm going to let it go for the full width. It's keeping the proportion of the image, and that's fine for now. Okay, so that's on the right layer, and now we have it there. So one thing that I might do, obviously there's trouble here with the way the text is working. So I might move that down in the grid, and basically I could take this box, I'm just grabbing its edge, just that grip there, and I can bring it up. And what that is basically, if you want to think about how it's bringing images into this, it's basically a window through which you're seeing the image, right? So if I click on this, what you're basically seeing is the framed cropped view of that image. The image itself continues down here the way it was before, and I can manipulate that. The way to do that, I can click again on this center little circle that shows up there. Now I have this other highlight area, and now I can move that image around. I'll just use my arrow key, and I can move this image around within that frame that was already set up. I can grab this and scale this up if I hold my shift key down. Again, it will maintain the proportions. So I can play around with this, maybe, yeah, something like that. I'm trying to get that text to work. And so then I can bring this down a little bit. I can make it even bigger if I want to try to maybe even line that up as part of that grid, and I can scroll down a little bit to get the text to be in there appropriately. Then again, if I wanted to go back and have it fill more of that grid up, I could just go back. So I'm not selected anything. I just clicked on the image, not that little circle, and then it's giving me the window, that frame, through which I see the image. So I can manipulate that. Now I can see more of that image, and maybe that text is starting to work. If I click this circle right away, it's going to give me the actual image placement, and then I could move it around in that view. Control Z. I don't know, maybe I'm happy with this. I'm going to select this, I'm going to go up to opacity, and I'll just turn down the opacity. Maybe I just want it to be really subtle, and right now it's really bold, so maybe I'll just wash it out with some opacity. Yeah, maybe that's a little better, kind of subtle. And then if I wanted to see what that's going to look like, again, I could turn off my guides. That's one. Sorry, there we go. I still have these boxes, so I can go up to view, overprint preview, and I can see how that might look. I don't know. That's not the best, but you get the idea. I don't know if I like that image in there. Anyway, and I'm going to go back to view and turn that off because eventually you do want those boxes to work with. And I can turn the guides back on. Pan over. Table of contents, the same thing. So I'll go back to, maybe I'll put this on text body, or you could, title text. I could select that, Control C for copy, go to this layout, Control V for paste, and there it is. And I can put that back in its cell there. And instead of this, maybe I don't need my name there anymore. I can maybe take this and put it up. And I'm just working with the grid now. Not quite right. And I don't know, maybe that's okay. And then I could paste it again. And maybe my table of contents will be right here. And I will just call this, and I should change that font. Let's see, table, oops, that font. Okay. Or, I kind of wanted just to keep the size of text here, so I don't want to have to go back and change all that. And then go over here. There we go. Oh, that's why it wasn't. There was a space in there. There we go. Okay. Table of contents. And maybe this, I'll also have it justified. And then I had, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just went through and said X1. I forgot what that, I forgot what that title was. Whatever the project title was. And then you could just say, there's that, and then whatever pages that it'll be on, so 1 and 2. And you can use, obviously, the correct titles here. So if I go back into this, I can remember what the titles are. It just says photo montage. Let's see. Ideas in motion. So it would be called that. So then the page, and then obviously the next one, I'm just giving a little space, exercise 2, whatever that was, I believe that was, well, I have all those laid out in the other layout here. Looking at too many things. Okay, so go over here. You can see basically the way I laid that out. It's a little bit different in the grid. So ARC 243, table of contents, and there's the space, and then you can see the actual table there. So I don't know, I could add an image, but sometimes it's just nice to have some white space, just some relief from all of that stuff. There's going to be a lot of action with these other images, so it might be nice just to have a clean table of contents. It doesn't have to be saturated with images. It can be a little bit of relief from layout to layout. Let's see, cover page, table of contents, exercise, spreads. Okay, so the way I was working with this grid, and really I was just being playful with it. There's no science to this. It's just working with the grid one way or the other. So in this case, it's a full bleed. You can see here there's that 1/8 inch. I don't really like that. I like the one I did on this new one better. But you know, there's text here, and that text flows into this text, so I can modify it. Here is the title for it, and this is all one spread here. So this is supposed to be the, well, this one is the space frag photo montage project. So you know, the texture from the image, the texture images is here, just raw. Here's the other one, that kind of curled wood. Here's the image fragment that I was working with. So there's the title, and this would describe here. This would be the descriptive text here. And then full bleed or full layout is the actual photo montage itself. So I'll just walk through that quickly. In a first layout, and I'll actually look at what I did for the ideas in motion. Okay, so raw image, that was part of it. There's working images. So, you know, I could start bringing some of this in. Certainly I can bring in the final that I had for print here. So again, I should be able just to drag this over. Now I didn't make sure I was on the right layer. I'm probably on the wrong layer. So I'll have to change the objects layer. So I'm going to go up here into the corner and just go into a full bleed situation all the way to the margins. If it can't quite make it, you can always tweak that later. So, you know, I don't know, this doesn't quite fit. And the layout itself for this, you know, kind of cropping it off won't really work. So I could just take the frame and see what layer I'm on. I want it actually to be on image main. And I could turn these others off just so or lock them rather, so I don't accidentally put other stuff on there. So I could, you know, try to frame it this way. Obviously it cuts it off, and that's kind of funky. I don't know if I really like that. I could also just start working with where I want this to be off of it. So I could just play with this frame and say, well, maybe I'll deal with it here, or maybe, you know, it'll be down low or something. Maybe I'll put text up there, what have you. So I can just select this image. Right now it's obviously cropped in a weird way, and some of these presets will help to rectify that. So fill frame proportionally, it's going to maximize one dimension within the frame, or in this case it's going to fill the content proportion to make sure the actual photo montage is going to fit in there. So, you know, in this case it's not quite working with the grid, and again, it doesn't have to fill up a whole area. We'll try that and fill it proportionally, a little bit too tall. Proportionally, I can, I don't know, sort of floating in there. So you can play around with that. The grid, it doesn't quite work. It's not quite working with this 11 by 17, and especially this layout. And the other example, this one, I was able to get full bleed, and some of the actual images you can see is it's actually cropped off. Let's see, image, there we go. So you can see here it's kind of cropped off, but it worked okay, where I can get the text in there and everything. So that kind of worked in this instance. I think that's fine, but this other one is just not quite working. So I'd have to figure out just a slightly different option for that. And you have the freedom, of course, to work with it that way. It wants to be a little bit more horizontal. So you can play around with that, or if you just want to go full bleed and just let it sit in this corner, you could do that as well. You could just, using my arrow key, just bring it right on over there and just let it sit in that corner, and maybe that's okay. And again, if you want to bring on other images, but you don't necessarily have to fill everything up. Okay, so maybe I want to bring in some other images as well that I used when I was working with this. for print, and so maybe some of these other images, like there's the sky, I don't know, maybe I'll put the sky here. And then again, I could change this around and then go back to this. And you can have this fit, auto fit, so when you change this, it'll automatically change the content. I don't usually keep that toggled. You could. So, you know, that might be enough. I might just scroll that over. That's part of what I was working with. Let's see what else. Oh, there's this raw piece. I think this was in there. And I'll bring this over, and then I'll just arrow this over to fit the main intervention in for this project. And then there was something else. So what else did I have over here? So this wasn't even part of it. Anyway, it should be relative to what's going on here. There's this faceted building thing. That's the Spertus Institute in Chicago. Working, I think, maybe this I'll bring over. Maybe I'm going to get this to take this place. And I'll just select this and delete it. It doesn't belong there. And bring this over. And I don't know, you could maybe work with it that way. I want to scroll that down a little bit so I get major sort of ideas down. Okay, maybe I'm fine with that. So those are just basic components. I know there's a diagram that I had as well that I could include, like so one of these files. But you know, you get the idea. It should include some of those files. Okay, so since it should include it, I will include it. And I can still pan over, and then maybe I'll just pop it in here. Okay, so so we have the basic components. There's some other stuff going on here, of course. And then what you want to do for the descriptive text, you know, this had descriptive text, but it was more so conceptually about what was going on here. Describe what you did, right? So, you know, think about this as being a potential part of your submittal for architecture or ID third year, and you know, the reviewing committee faculty isn't necessarily going to know what was going on, why these are the way they are. So you want to describe what you learned and how things proceeded, so that would be the descriptive text. So one could be the body text, and maybe just as a start, I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to, again, copy that. I mean, I'm just going to paste it just because it's already kind of set up with the fonts and everything. Maybe the title would be down here. And it already says ideas in motion. Look at that. And, you know, photo montage. Then you could include, you know, Photoshop. And Illustrator. What are the tools that you used, basically? Okay, so all of this, let's just say they have to be justified. Oh, that's not justifying. Interesting. This is just not changing. Photoshop. part of this, it's just, this is just word processing stuff that I'm dealing with right now, and that's, you know, same for any kind of software. Just kind of just figuring out what it's doing. I don't know why it's not behaving here. That is odd to me. It's not responding at all to these. That's weird. It might be, let's see. Well, okay. Anyway, there it is. Maybe I want this to be bigger, so I can go up here, make a nice big font. Maybe photo montage is, I don't know, that's bigger too. And then Photoshop Illustrator, it's basically what we were working with. So there's title text. Make sure it's on the right layer. There it is. Okay, so now I want some body text. So say I'll start describing what's going on in this box here, and then maybe I want the text to continue there. Okay, so what you're able to do then is if I right-click, just to see how it's going to look, you should be, I'll double-click on it, sorry, and then that's automatically going to bring up the text tool. And if I right-click then, I should be able to insert placeholder text. So it's just gibberish. But you can format it and everything, so I can get in here, make sure it's the font that I want, which I'm using that, make sure it's organized the way I want it to be justified that way. So we have that there, and then there's this other one here. So if I just select it, see there are these little control boxes everywhere, so I'm going to click this box right here, just one click, and I get this little tool here. Basically what it's going to let me do is going to let me decide what other text will flow into it, right? So it wants the leading text that'll go into this. So I'll select into this box, and now I can also insert placeholder text. And so you can see it partly populated this here. So if I take away text from here, those are automatically just flowing together. So that's kind of sweet. So then you can talk at length about what's going on with this layout, or what your thoughts about it, what you learned from it. You have some text here, and you can just see how I'm working with the grid, right? And I'm not saying this is the best composition. This is problematic perhaps for a few reasons, and you could work with it a lot more. But basically, 2 cells, 1 cell, major image here, this big text here, how it goes down, the justification of it, all of that is just kind of leading to some kind of sensibility, but also the flexibility to have one layout be a little bit different than the next, but within the same sort of family. So you can start to set up a kind of visual language in terms of how you're working with text and image throughout these layouts. So those are the basic steps for the exercise. The only thing that I'll just show you how to do quickly is how to print this. So basically all you do, because you're going to be generating a PDF file, and you would do that to hand it off to someone else to print a physical version anyway. I'm going to go into File and into Print. And then you'll select the appropriate driver. I want to print to a PDF. You can change the format here as well, so get into the driver for Adobe PDF. It's going to give you this warning that there may be some conflict, but I will go through that anyway. Into Preferences. So here, you're in the Preferences now for Adobe PDF. And if you're going to really print it, you maybe want to make sure it's high quality, right? So you might want to select that. It's going to be a bigger file size, but you're going to get a better resolution. There's also others here for smallest file size. That's something that you might use just if it was going to be like on screen. Press quality. So, but you can go high quality print. That should be enough. The rest of this should be okay. So it's really just getting to that It's already set to letter because we set that up in InDesign already. Good to go, good to go. And then it's going to print all the copies. And this is just like printing any PDF from any piece of software. So I'll call it this. I'm just going to, here, this is the date, is 17, the year, April 12th. Folio, that's the exercise. You might put in like, you know, X5, and then whatever else you'd like to add to that. And I'll say save. It's going to go through, flatten, print all that stuff. And then this should pop up, or the default is for this to pop up. Now, if you're going to actually print this, it only printed, didn't print any of the blanks. It only printed what had image on it. So you're seeing a kind of a, it's a little bit broken here. Let me open up the other example I printed, portfolio, this previous one. Now what I did to this, so this is just a previous example. This is from this other file from here. So I completed the table of contents. I just left this blank so it's white. It'll basically be the back of this cover. And so that should be appropriate for printing. You want to make sure that it's set up so that it'll be front, back, front, back, front, back in the right order, so then these pages will face each other as the intended spread. Just a couple of other examples here. But this is the PDF file that was generated. The only thing I did here was to add a blank sheet, and I did that so if you look at this view in a let's see, 2-page view, then we have a blank, we have the cover sheet, table of contents, and all of these layouts match up appropriately. You can see the ones that I completed. So here's one layout, there's another layout. You can see even how minimal this was with the text. I just had a little bit of text there, a little bit of text there, just that one fragment image, the title text, and that was it, and then the big image. So it doesn't have to be super crazy or be, you know, packed with content. It should be artful, should be a little bit poetic. You know, this one has a little bit more going on, but you know, there's still some space here that's working with. So think about that. But the way I got this to work originally, it came in. I'm just going to delete this page. Okay, so it came in like this. So a double looking at it with 2 pages. If you want to see the full spread, it's all off, right? So these just don't line up. So in order to get it lined up, I right-clicked, insert page, and there's an option, insert a blank page. And I could say after or before. In this case, I want it to be before that thumbnail there. Okay, and now it's going to read appropriately. That's just for the digital file. For the print, you would want this to be the first print here. You wouldn't want this blank page there. You'd want this page to be the first one, so it would be, I'll go back and delete this. Again, so this would be the front of a page, this is the back of the page, and that would be the spread partner to the table of contents here, and then they would move accordingly, right? So you have to think about how it's going to print physically, but also digitally you want to make sure that it's going to present appropriately as well. So it's just a matter of adding or not adding that extra page. That should do it. The only thing to keep in mind for submittal for this exercise is that I'll be asking for 2 separate PDF files. One PDF file will be will have all your screenshots in it, right? So everything that you've been looking at the different layouts, looking at how you worked with the master sheets, all of that. Doesn't have to be super extensive, but it should be a few, at least 3 layouts, looking at the cover sheet, looking maybe at the table of contents, and maybe looking at a few of the layouts. And then a separate file, I want the final portfolio version. So that's where you would add a blank page here, And so when I open it up, I'll see the double page spread, and then I can move through them and see the layouts here the way that you intended them. Think about this as a run through for your, again, your program applications to get into third year. This is a great opportunity to just kind of dry run, think about some different techniques, what you think about this grid, if you want to use a different technique for that one. For this example, I do want you to use a grid like what I just showed for it, but the options are open there to do some different things as you apply for your respective programs. Okay, I think that's long enough. I guess there'll be one more a tutorial perhaps, but that would be for studio. In any case, thanks guys.